Like we think that professors, they have it all figured out. Whereas they don't. They're also human beings. Like us. They're also figuring it out. Let's talk a bit about relationship building. If we think about the relationships in your life, let's take marriage, like partner that you choose for life. What is the intention that you enter in the marriage? Is it the status symbol? I'm gonna get married because I will have the married status, or because I will have a partner that is going to be my status symbol. Or, like when in the movie is this phrase, they get married and they live happily ever after, where the real hard work begins, where the life begins, where the relationship begins. This is a totally new chapter. So do you start your PhD saying, I am doing a PhD because afterwards I will be a doctor, which I can imagine majority of us are doing? Or do you consider that this is going to be a collaborative work, that you are entering a group of a professor to use the knowledge and the experience that they have built upon to build a relationship with this professor, to build relationship with the peers in that group, colleagues? So, thinking that this will take 3 to 5 years of your life, would you look at it as a one-night stand? Very long night? That you don't care about building something? Or do you look at it as a long-term relationship? And yeah, oftentimes it's this attitude, okay, I'm going there because I'm get a title and I'm going to become a doctor, and bye-bye, I'm going forward my way. Yeah, then I will figure it out. Whereas you are going to encounter so many people on your way. So if the focus is on building the relationships with those people, then there are going to be good times, there are going to be bad times, there are going to be times that we don't understand what the hell is going on both sides. And this is a very important one. Like we think that professors, they have it all figured out. Whereas they don't. They're also human beings. Like us. They're also figuring it out. For them, it's also a new chapter with you to lead you through a PhD. It's something totally new because you bring a new set of skills, a new personality, new interaction. They're also figuring it out. The circumstances are different than for your PhD before you or the PhD after you. The quality of the relationship is going to be different. So what is the factor that is going to determine how this relationship is going to roll out? Majorly, it is how you approach it. Because you can hear a lot of stories like, oh yeah, this professor is very angry and he's bossy, or like he doesn't take into account your opinion, etc. Depends how you approach it. If you approach it and you come and look at the professor and say, oh, this is also another human being with another set of struggles that I'm not aware of. So we are only aware, of course, of our own experience. Hopefully, we are aware of our own experience. But we are not very much aware of what is going on the other side. And the effort that you will put in there is going to determine the quality of the relationship. How empathetic you can be, how curious you can be to figure out what is really bothering that person. So maybe you can imagine a scenario where a professor came very nervous and said, no, it has to be like this. And it feels like there is no room for discussion anymore. And yeah, I see often people will be like, okay, let's not make him or her more angry and just do it like that, even though it's at my own expense, even though I had other plans, even though this professor said this has to be done over the weekend, and you had plans to go and have fun and enjoy your free time, because you also deserve to chill out and to regenerate, to refresh, to be able to be creative again. So the first instance can be, okay, like, let's not make him or her angry anymore and just do what it is. And then you end up frustrated because you didn't get what you wanted and you didn't bring it through. So there was no dialogue, there was no communication, there was no interaction. And the problem is if this becomes symptomatic, chronic. If this continues repeating for other situations as well, because the fear is that, you can end up in the same situation and then you say, okay, I've been there, I know how to react to this, just step aside. And maybe you do, maybe that is the best solution for some cases. I'm just talking out in the open with myself here and inviting you to check what is going on the other side. Of course, not to be intrusive and feeling how far you can go, but be curious about that person. And instead of maybe thinking, oh, I am just going to make him or her more angry, so let's just step out. You can say, oh, something is really bothering this professor. What is it? So having an honest human conversation is a beautiful way. And I know it's not easy. It's definitely not easy, and it's scary. And from my own experience, I can say that, when I am about to enter this kind of conversations, then my heart starts pounding and I don't know how it's going to be. And your brain goes in all sorts of directions, start imagining different scenarios, doom scenarios usually. And once the conversation starts, then all the tension from these imaginary scenarios disappears, and then you are there 100% in the moment. Of course, if you allow yourself that. So you can still go in a conversation and imagine all these doom scenarios and not be really present with what is going on. Or you can really be present there and try to figure out what's going on. Try to figure out what's going on with this other person who has another set of worries, who is also figuring it out, who is just learning how to be a professor, like you are learning how to do a PhD and how to be a PhD. Hopefully how to be a PhD rather than how to do a PhD, because you deserve to be a whole spectrum of things around this PhD rather than just define yourself as doing the PhD, that we can get very focused and say, oh, in this period of my life, I'm just going to focus on this aspect, and then I will focus on other things when this is over, because it's too overwhelming. There's too much to do. I have to be focused all the time. Can you really be focused all the time? If you can, tell me a secret. And there's a joke that a boss comes to an employee who is working for, 14, 16 hours, and asking the employee, oh, okay, so how many hours did you work this week? And the employee says, oh, every day for 14 hours, and, just to impress. And then the boss looks at this person and says, okay, so when do you actually have time to think? Of course, in our case, thinking is a part of our job, but having a moment to relax also brings you a new set of ideas. Do you know that moment when you were having a shower and something just clicks in your brain? My best friend during university, she used to wake up in the middle of the night because in her dreams, she would resolve things that she didn't resolve awake. So this resting period is super important. It also happens to me when I go to bed, and when the day was full and I'm overwhelmed, I go to bed and my brain still needs time. I cannot fall asleep instantly. So it takes, I don't know, 10-15 minutes, and then it starts like connecting things, figuring it out, like putting them where they're supposed to be. And then some connections, they happen. So then the annoying thing is that, I want to memorize these things that my brain has actually put together. And luckily we have phones now, so I just make a voice memo and speak by myself with my, bed night voice. And then tomorrow I try to recap what were the findings that I had, because I would forget them if I would just fall asleep. These brilliant ideas. It happened to me a bunch of times that I would be like, oh, this is a brilliant idea. I will remember it for sure tomorrow. And then tomorrow it's like, either I totally forget, or it's like, I did have this brilliant idea. What was it? Like, I will think about it. Like, it will come to me later. Doesn't really happen in my case. Coming back to building the relationships, maybe it's easier to look at peers, because with peers we are on the same line, and there we are actually genuinely curious and we can relate because we are going through similar or the same experience. Whereas with a professor, maybe we put some distance, there's some hierarchy, we look at it a bit differently, but we are ultimately all human beings. And we all have a different set of circumstances, a different set of challenges, problems that we are facing, and we are doing our best at that moment. So we are figuring it out. Approaching it from that perspective, it might be easier to say, okay, let's figure it out together. And this is something that keeps on building for years to come. Because the beauty is, and this is like, would be advice for both sides, because you're both building a relationship. Of course, like, you cannot build a relationship if the other person is not willing, but at least you can try. You can go there and check, is this possible? Can I do it? And not just once and say, okay, I tried, this doesn't work. Next. Focus on the quality. And this is so again, advice would be something that I wish for both sides, is to focus on building this relationship. Because for you as a PhD, if you build this relationship and it grows better and better, and it flourishes, and it's nice. It doesn't have to be the most amazing relationship with another human being ever, but it can be good. It can be really good. And if it's really good, then you're very happy. Then you can also interact on a more human level. Then you can ask a different set of questions. Then you can learn more about this person. Then you can share some interest. Then at the point when you're looking for a job, this person is going to help you. And you are going to keep probably this relationship. Even if you don't keep in touch, even after 10 years, happens that you are working in the same area, or there's a certain connection that this professor can provide. You're like, oh yeah, you remember this professor? Everybody would be happy to get in touch. Like, you would be happy to get in touch with the professor, and vice versa. And for the professor, again, if they are looking at PhDs as a long-term project rather than a short-term project, because let's say in their academic career it is likely a short-term project. If they're looking at it from a long-term perspective, then also these people, when they develop and when they go to companies or wherever they go afterwards, they are a super, important network. So this is your seed from where you start to branch your network. And it can be very opportunistic and say, I'm going to be building this relationship just so that I can use all the benefits of these connections. Sure, you can do that. On the other hand, if you really genuinely build a, let's say, caring relationship, that's gazillion times better than just going there with the intention, I'm gonna use this connection. So make a choice for yourself, try it. Like the PhD, it's a trial and error. You get so many times to try it with your PhD supervisor, and if it doesn't work, let me know where you got stuck. If there is area where I can support you, let me know. I would really love that.